3 months after I returned from Afghanistan, missing my left leg below the knee, my own mother looked me dead in the eye and said, "You owe us this vacation, Marcus, after everything we've been through because of your situation." She was holding my VA disability check in her manicured hands, the same hands that used to pack my lunch for school. I never imagined those hands would steal from me while I was learning to walk again. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The worst part about losing a limb isn't the phantom pain that keeps you up at night or the stares from strangers at the grocery store. It's watching your family transform into people you don't recognize, all because of a monthly check with your name on it. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there from the moment I hobbled through the front door of my childhood home in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. My mom, Patricia Hernandez, had already cleared out my old bedroom and turned it into what she called her craft room. My stepfather, Rick, barely looked up from his recliner when I walked in. My younger sister, Carmen, was too busy planning her spring break trip to Miami to even acknowledge that her big brother was home from war. "We figured you'd want the basement," Mom said, not even offering to help me navigate the stairs with my new prosthetic. "It's quieter down there, better for your recovery." The basement smelled like mildew and broken dreams. A fold-out couch sat in the corner next to boxes labeled "Marcus, Old Stuff" in Mom's handwriting. This was where they expected me to rebuild my life. But I tried to make it work. I really did. The VA had set me up with a temporary rating of 70% disability while they processed my permanent claim. That meant $1,716.28 hit my bank account every month. It wasn't much, but it was supposed to help me get back on my feet, literally and figuratively. I planned to use it for physical therapy, a reliable car, and eventually my own apartment. Maybe even go back to school using my GI Bill benefits. Those plans lasted exactly 37 days. I should have noticed the subtle changes first. Mom started cooking my favorite meals again, pot roast on Sundays, her famous enchiladas on Wednesdays. She'd bring me coffee in the morning and ask about my physical therapy appointments with genuine concern. Rick actually started conversations with me about football and asked how I was adjusting to civilian life. Carmen even invited me to hang out with her and her boyfriend Tyler when they watched movies upstairs. For a brief moment, I felt like I had my family back, like maybe losing my leg had brought us closer together somehow. I was naive enough to believe their sudden interest in my well-being was genuine love, not a calculated campaign to access my disability payments. The first red flag came when Mom casually mentioned over dinner that she'd always dreamed of taking the family to Hawaii. "You know, Marcus, we've never taken a real family vacation together. With everything that's happened, don't you think we all deserve a break? Some time to heal and bond as a family?" I agreed. It sounded nice, actually. A chance to make new memories and maybe repair some of the distance that had grown between us over the years. "The thing is," she continued, cutting her pot roast into precise little squares, "Rick's hours got cut at the plant, and Carmen's college expenses are eating us alive. But with your monthly check, we could probably swing it. As a family investment, you know?" Red flag number 2 came the next morning when I found Mom sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of travel brochures spread out in front of her. She had a yellow legal pad covered in numbers and calculations, and her laptop was open to a Hawaiian resort website showing rooms that cost $400 per night. "I've been doing some research," she said without looking up. "There's this amazing resort on Maui called the Sunset Paradise. It has everything: spa services, snorkeling, luau dinners. The whole package for 5 people would be about $8,500 for a week." 5 people. That included Tyler, Carmen's boyfriend of 3 months. "Mom, that's 5 months of my disability payments," I said, lowering myself carefully into the chair across from her. She finally looked up, and her expression shifted into something I'd never seen before, a mixture of manipulation and desperation wrapped in maternal guilt. "Marcus, honey, you have to understand. This family has been through hell worrying about you. Do you know what it was like getting that phone call, thinking we might lose you? Rick had to take unpaid time off work to help me cope. Carmen's grades suffered because she was so worried about her big brother. We've all sacrificed for your military service. The way she said your military service made it sound like I'd gone on vacation instead of serving my country. I thought we could use your first few checks to give this family something positive to focus on, something to help us all heal together. That's when Rick appeared in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, nodding along like they'd rehearsed this conversation. You're right, son. We've all been through the ringer. A family trip could be exactly what we need to move forward, together. The word together felt like a trap. But I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe that my family genuinely cared about healing and bonding. I wanted to believe that they saw me as more than just a monthly payment with a sob story attached. So I said yes. Within 48 hours, Mom had booked everything. First-class flights for everyone, 7 nights at the Sunset Paradise Resort, rental cars, spa appointments, snorkeling excursions, and dinner reservations at restaurants that charged more for one meal than I used to make in a day as an enlisted soldier. We wanted to surprise you with the upgraded accommodations, Mom explained when I saw the final itinerary. You deserve the best after everything you've been through. But when I asked to see the receipts, she got defensive. Marcus, you're going to love it, trust me. I've handled all the details so you don't have to stress about anything. Just focus on getting better and enjoying time with your family. That's when I realized I'd made a terrible mistake. The third red flag came when I asked Mom to transfer the money back to my account so I could handle the payments myself. She claimed she'd already paid everything in full using her credit card and needed me to reimburse her immediately. The resort has a strict no cancellation policy, she explained. If we don't pay within 24 hours, we lose everything. I had to act fast to secure our spots. I transferred $5,200 from my disability payment that day. Mom promised the remaining balance would come from her own savings account. That was the last time I saw my disability money under my own control. 2 weeks before the trip, Carmen approached me with tears in her eyes and a story about unexpected college expenses. Her financial aid had fallen through, she claimed, and she needed $1,200 immediately or she'd have to drop out mid-semester. I'll pay you back as soon as we get home from Hawaii, she promised. Tyler's parents said they might loan me the money, but not until after spring break. I transferred $1,200 from my second disability payment. 1 week before the trip, Rick cornered me in the basement with his own sob story. His truck had broken down, and he needed $800 for repairs to get back to work. Without his income, he explained, the family couldn't afford their portion of the vacation expenses. I'm already feeling guilty about letting you pay for so much of this trip, he said, though his expression suggested otherwise. The least I can do is make sure I can contribute my fair share once we get back. I transferred $800 from what remained of my second payment. 3 days before departure, Mom came downstairs with shopping bags full of new vacation clothes for everyone. Bikinis for Carmen, Hawaiian shirts for Rick, sundresses and sandals for herself. The receipts showed she'd spent over $900. I used the emergency credit card, she explained, but I'll need you to cover it from your next payment. We can't show up to a fancy resort looking like tourists. The irony of that statement didn't seem to register with her. By the time we boarded the plane to Maui, I had exactly $347 left in my checking account and a growing suspicion that I'd been expertly manipulated by the people who were supposed to love me most. But I still held on to hope that maybe, just maybe, this vacation would be worth it. Maybe we'd come back as a stronger, closer family. Maybe the money would turn out to be a worthwhile investment in our relationships. I had no idea that my family's betrayal was just getting started, or that someone from the VA was already asking questions about my unusual spending patterns. The Sunset Paradise Resort was everything the brochures had promised and more. Crystal blue water stretched endlessly toward the horizon, palm trees swayed in the tropical breeze, and our suite had a private balcony overlooking the beach. For about 30 minutes, I almost forgot how much this paradise was costing me. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Then I watched my family transform into people I'd never seen before. Mom strutted through the lobby like she owned the place, her new designer sunglasses perched on her head and her voice carrying across the marble floors as she demanded upgrades and complained about minor inconveniences. The woman who used to clip coupons and buy generic cereal was now tipping the bellhop $50 and ordering $25 cocktails like money meant nothing. "Marcus, honey, you should try the lobster," she called out during our first dinner at the resort's premier restaurant. "It's only $85 a plate, and we're celebrating." Rick had discovered the resort's golf course and signed up for daily lessons with the club pro at $200 per session. Carmen and Tyler were living like Instagram influencers, ordering room service at all hours and booking couple spa treatments that cost more than most people's rent. Nobody seemed concerned about the mounting expenses except me. "Relax, bro," Carmen said when I mentioned the costs. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime trip. You can't put a price on family memories." But I was putting a price on everything. The appetizers at lunch, the excursion fees, the premium sunscreen from the resort gift shop that cost $35 a bottle. Every swipe of a credit card felt like another piece of my future being carved away. By day 3, I realized they weren't even pretending this was about family bonding anymore. Rick spent most of his time at the golf course or the casino. Carmen and Tyler were always at the pool or the beach, taking selfies and posting stories about their amazing vacation. Mom had found a group of other resort wives and spent her days gossiping by the adult pool, drinking Mai Tais, and complaining about how exhausting it was to plan family vacations. I was left alone most of the time, sitting on our balcony watching the sunset and trying to calculate how much money we were burning through each day. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd paid for a family vacation where my family barely spent time with me. On day 4, things got worse. I was in the resort gift shop buying postcards when I overheard Mom talking to her new friend from the pool. "Oh, Marcus is doing so well with his adjustment," she was saying. "The military really takes care of their wounded veterans these days. He gets this generous disability check every month, and honestly, it's been a blessing for our whole family. We've been able to do things we never could afford before." The way she said "blessing for our whole family" made my stomach turn. "How wonderful that he's so generous with his family," her friend replied. "Not all children are so thoughtful." "Well, we've been through so much together. This is really the least he can do after everything we've sacrificed." I left the gift shop without buying anything. That night at dinner, emboldened by several drinks, Mom decided to share her future plans. "You know what, Marcus? This trip has been so good for all of us. I think we should make it an annual tradition. Maybe next year we could try Europe, or a cruise through the Mediterranean." "With what money?" I asked. She looked at me like I'd asked a stupid question. "With your disability payments, of course. You get them every month for the rest of your life, right? We should take advantage of that and really live a little." Rick nodded enthusiastically. "Your mom's got a point, son. You're young, you've got guaranteed income, and family is everything. We should all benefit from your service to this country." That phrase, "we should all benefit from your service," echoed in my head for hours. Carmen chimed in with her own plans. "Actually, I've been thinking about switching my major to international studies. It would mean staying in school longer, but with Marcus's monthly check helping out, I wouldn't have to worry about student loans." Tyler, who had been quiet most of the trip, finally spoke up. "My lease is up in June. I was thinking Carmen and I could get a nicer place together if we had some financial help from family." They were already spending my future disability payments in their heads, dividing up money I hadn't even received yet. "Wait," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Those payments are for my medical expenses, my living costs, and my future. They're not family income." The table went silent. Mom set down her wine glass with a sharp clink. "Marcus Anthony Hernandez," she said, in the voice she'd used when I was 10 years old and had broken something valuable. I cannot believe you're being so selfish right now, after everything this family has done for you. What exactly has this family done for me? Are you kidding? Her voice was getting louder, and other diners were starting to stare. We raised you, we supported your decision to join the military even though it terrified us. We worried about you every single day you were deployed. When you got hurt, who do you think was there for you? Who opened their home to you when you had nowhere else to go? You put me in your basement and turned my bedroom into a craft room. We gave you a place to live rent-free, Rick interrupted. Do you know how much money that saves you every month? You should be grateful. Grateful? The word came out louder than I intended. I'm paying for this entire vacation with money that's supposed to help me rebuild my life, and I should be grateful? Carmen rolled her eyes. God, Marcus, you're being so dramatic. It's not like you're homeless or starving. You have everything you need. I have everything I need because of my disability payments. The payments you want to treat as family money. Mom leaned forward, her expression shifting from anger to something more calculated. Let me ask you something, Marcus. Where would you be right now without this family? Living in some VA facility, struggling to afford basic necessities? We've provided you with emotional support, housing, meals, and transportation when you needed it. We've been your caregivers and your support system. She paused for effect. All we're asking for is a little appreciation, a little recognition that your good fortune should be shared with the people who love you most. Is that really so unreasonable? The manipulation was so smooth, so perfectly executed, that for a moment I almost believed her. I almost convinced myself that maybe I was being ungrateful. Maybe I did owe them something for their support. Then I remembered sitting alone in that basement for weeks, learning to walk with my prosthetic while they lived their lives upstairs like nothing had changed. I remembered applying for jobs and apartment rentals, planning for independence, dreaming of a future where I could take care of myself again. Those dreams were disappearing, $200 spa treatments and $85 lobster dinners at a time. I need some air, I said, standing up from the table. Marcus, don't walk away from this conversation, Mom called after me. We're trying to have an adult discussion about family responsibilities. But I was already heading for the beach, my prosthetic making soft clicking sounds against the resort's polished floors. Outside, the Hawaiian air was warm and humid, filled with the sound of waves and distant laughter from other families enjoying their vacations. Families who had probably saved for months or years to afford this trip. Families where everyone contributed, where the financial burden wasn't placed entirely on one person's disability compensation. I sat on a beach chair and pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from the VA. A voicemail from someone named Jennifer Walsh asking me to call back regarding my disability claim. For the first time in days, something that wasn't related to my family's spending spree demanded my attention. I decided to call Jennifer back in the morning. That night, lying in the resort bed that was costing me $400 per night, I started planning my escape from this paradise that was becoming my financial prison. I had no idea that Jennifer Walsh was about to become the most important person in my life, or that my family's vacation was about to take a turn none of us saw coming. The Sunset Paradise Resort was everything the brochures had promised and more. Crystal blue water stretched endlessly toward the horizon, palm trees swayed in the tropical breeze, and our suite had a private balcony overlooking the beach. For about 30 minutes, I almost forgot how much this paradise was costing me. Then I watched my family transform into people I'd never seen before. Mom strutted through the lobby like she owned the place, her new designer sunglasses perched on her head and her voice carrying across the marble floors as she demanded upgrades and complained about minor inconveniences. The woman who used to clip coupons and buy generic cereal was now tipping the bellhop $50 and ordering $25 cocktails like money meant nothing. Marcus, honey, you should try the lobster, she called out during our first dinner at the resort's premier restaurant. It's only $85 a plate, and we're celebrating. Rick had discovered the resort's golf course and signed up for daily lessons with the club pro at $200 per session. Carmen and Tyler were living like Instagram influencers, ordering room service at all hours and booking couple spa treatments that cost more than most people's rent. Nobody seemed concerned about the mounting expenses except me. "Relax, bro," Carmen said when I mentioned the costs. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime trip. You can't put a price on family memories." But I was putting a price on everything. The appetizers at lunch, the excursion fees, the premium sunscreen from the resort gift shop that cost $35 a bottle. Every swipe of a credit card felt like another piece of my future being carved away. By day 3, I realized they weren't even pretending this was about family bonding anymore. Rick spent most of his time at the golf course or the casino. Carmen and Tyler were always at the pool or the beach, taking selfies and posting stories about their amazing vacation. Mom had found a group of other resort wives and spent her days gossiping by the adult pool, drinking Mai Tais and complaining about how exhausting it was to plan family vacations. I was left alone most of the time, sitting on our balcony watching the sunset and trying to calculate how much money we were burning through each day. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd paid for a family vacation where my family barely spent time with me. On day 4, things got worse. I was in the resort gift shop buying postcards when I overheard Mom talking to her new friend from the pool. "Oh, Marcus is doing so well with his adjustment," she was saying. "The military really takes care of their wounded veterans these days. He gets this generous disability check every month, and honestly, it's been a blessing for our whole family. We've been able to do things we never could afford before." The way she said "blessing for our whole family" made my stomach turn. "How wonderful that he's so generous with his family," her friend replied. "Not all children are so thoughtful." "Well, we've been through so much together. This is really the least he can do after everything we've sacrificed." I left the gift shop without buying anything. That night at dinner, emboldened by several drinks, Mom decided to share her future plans. "You know what, Marcus? This trip has been so good for all of us. I think we should make it an annual tradition. Maybe next year we could try Europe or a cruise through the Mediterranean." "With what money?" I asked. She looked at me like I'd asked a stupid question. "With your disability payments, of course. You get them every month for the rest of your life, right? We should take advantage of that and really live a little." Rick nodded enthusiastically. "Your mom's got a point, son. You're young, you've got guaranteed income, and family is everything. We should all benefit from your service to this country." That phrase, "we should all benefit from your service," echoed in my head for hours. Carmen chimed in with her own plans. "Actually, I've been thinking about switching my major to international studies. It would mean staying in school longer, but with Marcus's monthly check helping out, I wouldn't have to worry about student loans." Tyler, who had been quiet most of the trip, finally spoke up. "My lease is up in June. I was thinking Carmen and I could get a nicer place together if we had some financial help from family." They were already spending my future disability payments in their heads, dividing up money I hadn't even received yet. "Wait," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Those payments are for my medical expenses, my living costs, and my future. They're not family income." The table went silent. Mom set down her wine glass with a sharp clink. "Marcus Anthony Hernandez," she said, "I cannot believe you're being so selfish right now, after everything this family has done for you." "What exactly has this family done for me?" "Are you kidding?" Her voice was getting louder, and other diners were starting to stare. "We raised you. We supported your decision to join the military even though it terrified us. We worried about you every single day you were deployed. When you got hurt, who do you think was there for you? Who opened their home to you when you had nowhere else to go? You put me in your basement and turned my bedroom into a craft room." "We gave you a place to live rent-free," Rick interrupted. "Do you know how much money that saves you every month? You should be grateful." "Grateful?" The word came out louder than I intended. "I'm paying for this entire vacation with money that's supposed to help me rebuild my life, and I should be grateful?" Carmen rolled her eyes. "God, Marcus, you're being so dramatic. It's not like you're homeless or starving. You have everything you need." I have everything I need because of my disability payments, the payments you want to treat as family money." Mom leaned forward, her expression shifting from anger to something more calculated. "Let me ask you something, Marcus. Where would you be right now without this family? Living in some VA facility, struggling to afford basic necessities? We've provided you with emotional support, housing, meals, and transportation when you needed it. We've been your caregivers and your support system." She paused for effect. "All we're asking for is a little appreciation, a little recognition that your good fortune should be shared with the people who love you most. Is that really so unreasonable?" The manipulation was so smooth, so perfectly executed, that for a moment I almost believed her. I almost convinced myself that maybe I was being ungrateful. Maybe I did owe them something for their support. Then I remembered sitting alone in that basement for weeks, learning to walk with my prosthetic while they lived their lives upstairs like nothing had changed. I remembered applying for jobs and apartment rentals, planning for independence, dreaming of a future where I could take care of myself again. Those dreams were disappearing. $200 spa treatments and $85 lobster dinners at a time. "I need some air," I said, standing up from the table. "Marcus, don't walk away from this conversation," Mom called after me. "We're trying to have an adult discussion about family responsibilities." But I was already heading for the beach, my prosthetic making soft clicking sounds against the resort's polished floors. Outside, the Hawaiian air was warm and humid, filled with the sound of waves and distant laughter from other families enjoying their vacations. Families who had probably saved for months or years to afford this trip. Families where everyone contributed, where the financial burden wasn't placed entirely on one person's disability compensation. I sat on a beach chair and pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from the VA. A voicemail from someone named Jennifer Walsh asking me to call back regarding my disability claim. For the first time in days, something that wasn't related to my family's spending spree demanded my attention. I decided to call Jennifer back in the morning. That night, lying in the resort bed that was costing me $400 per night, I started planning my escape from this paradise that was becoming my financial prison. I had no idea that Jennifer Walsh was about to become the most important person in my life, or that my family's vacation was about to take a turn none of us saw coming. Jennifer Walsh answered on the second ring, her voice professional but warm. "Mr. Hernandez, thank you for returning my call. I'm a claims investigator with the Department of Veterans Affairs, and I need to discuss some unusual activity we've detected on your account." My heart stopped. What kind of unusual activity? Large, rapid expenditures that don't align with typical disability benefit usage patterns. Your spending has triggered our fraud detection algorithms, and I'm required to conduct a preliminary investigation. I was standing on the resort balcony at 6 a.m. Hawaii time, watching the sunrise while my family slept off their hangovers from another expensive night at the resort bar. The irony of discussing financial fraud while surrounded by luxury my family was enjoying wasn't lost on me. "Can you walk me through your recent major purchases?" Jennifer asked. I explained the vacation, the family pressure, the mounting expenses. With each detail, the silence on her end grew longer. "Mr. Hernandez, I need to be very clear about something. VA disability benefits are specifically intended for the veteran's medical care, living expenses, and rehabilitation needs. Using them to fund family vacations could be construed as benefit misuse." The words hit me like a physical blow. "But they're my benefits. Can't I spend them how I choose?" "Legally, yes, within reason. But there are guidelines about appropriate use, and the VA monitors for patterns that suggest coercion, manipulation, or fraud. What you're describing raises several red flags." Jennifer scheduled a formal interview for the day after we returned to Iowa. She also mentioned that a field investigator would be conducting surprise visits to verify my living situation and family circumstances. "Mr. Hernandez, I want to help you, but I need complete honesty about your situation. If someone is exploiting your benefits, there are resources available to protect you." After hanging up, I sat on that balcony for 2 hours, watching the island wake up around me. Jet skis appeared on the horizon. Families began claiming beach chairs. The resort came alive with the sounds of vacation happiness that I was no longer part of. When I finally went back inside, Mom was already awake, sitting at the suite's dining table with her laptop open and credit card statements spread across the surface. "Marcus, honey, we need to talk about money." Here we go, I thought. I've been adding up all our vacation expenses, and we're a little over budget. She said this like it was a minor accounting error, not a complete financial disaster. The final total is going to be closer to $12,000 instead of the $8,500 we originally planned. $12,000! 7 months of my disability payments. How is that possible? Mom started rattling off additional expenses like she was reading a grocery list. Upgraded rental cars, premium excursions, extra nights they'd decided to book without consulting me, spa treatments that had become daily occurrences. Room service charges averaged $200 per day. Plus, Carmen and Tyler decided to extend their stay for spring break, so we need to cover their flights home separately. They're staying longer? Just 3 extra days. Tyler's never been to Hawaii, and Carmen thought it would be romantic. Young love, you know. I stared at my mother, this woman who had raised me, taught me right from wrong, and was now casually explaining how my disability money was funding my sister's romantic getaway with her boyfriend. "Mom, I don't have $12,000. She looked confused, like I'd spoken in a foreign language. "Of course you do, honey. You get that check every month. And this is a one-time expense for something really special." "A one-time expense? Last night you were talking about annual trips to Europe." "Well, yes, but those would be separate vacations. This is about this vacation." The circular logic was making my head spin. "Marcus," she continued, "I need you to transfer the money today. I've been covering everything on my credit cards and the bills are due soon. If we don't pay them, it'll hurt the whole family's credit." That's when I realized the true scope of their plan. They hadn't just spent my disability money, they'd spent money they didn't have, banking on my ability to bail them out indefinitely. What if I can't pay it? The question seemed to genuinely surprise her. "What do you mean? You have guaranteed income for life. This is exactly what those benefits are for, taking care of family." "No, Mom, they're taking care of me." Her expression shifted from confusion to something harder. "Marcus, I'm going to say this once, and I want you to really hear me. This family sacrificed everything for your military career. We supported your decision, even though it meant worrying every day that you might not come home. When you did come home injured, we opened our house to you without hesitation." She stood up, pacing around the suite's living area like a lawyer presenting closing arguments. "Rick took unpaid leave from work to help with your initial medical appointments. Carmen deferred her college plans to help around the house. I put my entire life on hold to become your caregiver. Do you think any of that was free? I never asked you to do those things. You didn't have to ask. That's what families do. And now, when we finally have an opportunity to create positive memories together, to heal as a family unit, you want to count pennies like we're strangers?" The guilt was expertly applied, but this time it didn't stick. Maybe it was Jennifer Walsh's voice in my head, or maybe I was finally seeing clearly, but Mom's manipulation felt transparent now. "I'm not paying for the extra expenses." "Excuse me?" I said I'm not paying. You made decisions without consulting me, and now you expect me to cover costs I never agreed to? Mom's face went through several color changes before settling on bright red. "Marcus Anthony Hernandez, you are being incredibly selfish and ungrateful right now. After everything we've done, everything we've sacrificed, this is how you repay us? By not letting you spend my disability money however you want? Yeah, I guess it is." That's when Rick emerged from the master bedroom, clearly having listened to enough of our conversation to understand the situation. "Son, your mother and I need to have a serious talk with you about family obligations and respect." For the next hour, they tag-teamed me with guilt, manipulation, and what I can only describe as emotional extortion. They brought up every sacrifice they'd ever made, every moment of worry during my deployment, every inconvenience my injury had caused them. Mom cried, real tears about how hurt she was that I didn't appreciate their love and support. Rick got angry. He talked about respect for elders and family loyalty and how disappointed he was in the man I'd become. They took turns playing good cop and bad cop, offering compromises and making threats, painting me as either an ungrateful son or a victim of my own military trauma who couldn't think clearly. Through it all, I kept thinking about Jennifer Walsh's words. If someone is exploiting your benefits, there are resources available to protect you. Finally, I said the words that would change everything. I'm calling the VA when we get home. I want them to review how my benefits are being used. The room went dead silent. Mom stopped crying mid-sob. Rick's angry expression froze. Even from the bedroom, I could hear Carmen and Tyler's conversation stop abruptly. "You're going to call the VA on your own family?" Mom asked in a whisper. "I'm going to ask them to help me understand the proper use of my benefits. If there's nothing wrong with how we're spending the money, then there's nothing to worry about." But their faces told a different story. They were worried. I am very worried. And for the first time since I'd lost my leg, I felt like I had some power back. The last 3 days of our Hawaiian vacation passed in tense silence. My family went through the motions of enjoying their tropical paradise, but the atmosphere had shifted completely. No more expensive dinners together. No more family activities. They treated me like I had betrayed them instead of the other way around. I spent those final days researching VA benefit regulations, veteran advocacy resources, and financial abuse protection services. I also started documenting every expense from the trip, every conversation about money, every promise about future payments. Because I had a feeling that when Jennifer Walsh interviewed me, I was going to need all the evidence I could gather. What I didn't know was that Jennifer Walsh was already gathering evidence of her own, and my family's troubles were about to get much worse than a canceled European vacation. The flight back to Cedar Rapids felt like a funeral procession. Mom sat in first class reading a magazine, occasionally glancing at me with wounded disappointment. Rick stared out the window, jaw clenched, radiating silent anger. Carmen and Tyler had upgraded themselves to business class, using points they'd somehow accumulated on my credit card, whispering and giggling like nothing had changed. I sat in economy, surrounded by families returning from their own Hawaiian adventures, listening to children excitedly describe their favorite memories. Normal families who had saved and planned and budgeted for their trips. Families where everyone contributed instead of one person bankrolling everyone else's dreams. The contrast wasn't lost on me. By the time we landed in Iowa, the temperature had dropped 40 degrees, and reality hit harder than the Midwest winter wind. This wasn't paradise anymore. This was home, where I had a VA interview scheduled in 18 hours and a family that now saw me as the enemy. The car ride to the house was suffocating. Nobody spoke except to give directions or comment on traffic. When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. A government sedan parked across the street with tinted windows and federal license plates. "Is that?" I started to ask. "How should I know?" Mom snapped. "Maybe it's for the neighbors." But her voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Fear. Inside the house, everything looked exactly the same, but the atmosphere had completely shifted. The family photos on the mantle seemed to mock me now. The basement stairs felt steeper. My fold-out couch looked more pathetic than ever. I was unpacking when I heard hushed, urgent voices coming through the heating vents from upstairs. Mom and Rick were having some kind of crisis meeting in the kitchen. "Told you this was a bad idea from the beginning," Rick's voice was strained. "Don't you dare blame me for this," Mom hissed back. "We all agreed it was the right thing to do. The boy owes us after everything we've... The boy is talking to federal investigators tomorrow. Do you understand what that means?" Their voices dropped too low for me to make out individual words, but the tone was unmistakably panicked. 20 minutes later, I heard car door slamming and engine starting. When I looked out the basement window, Rick's truck and Carmen's Honda were both gone. They were abandoning ship. I spent that evening alone in the basement, organizing every receipt, bank statement, and document I could find related to the Hawaii trip. I printed emails, screenshot text messages, and wrote down every conversation I could remember about money, family obligations, and future vacation plans. At 9 p.m., my phone rang. Jennifer Walsh. Mr. Hernandez, I hope you don't mind me calling this late. I wanted to confirm our interview tomorrow and let you know that Agent Rodriguez will be accompanying me. He's with our fraud investigation unit. Fraud investigation unit. The word sent chills down my spine. Is that necessary? Standard procedure when we detect patterns of potential benefit exploitation. Don't worry, this is about gathering information, not making accusations. However, I should mention that we've received some additional reports about your case. What kind of reports? Anonymous tips suggesting that family members may be coercing you into inappropriate use of your disability benefits. The caller provided specific details about vacation expenses and future financial plans. Someone had called the VA about my family, someone who knew details about our situation. Do you know who called? I can't reveal that information, but I can tell you that the caller seemed genuinely concerned about your welfare. They mentioned feeling uncomfortable about witnessing conversations regarding your military compensation. After hanging up, I sat in the dark basement trying to figure out who might have contacted the VA. A neighbor who overheard arguments? Someone from the resort who witnessed our family dynamics? One of Mom's new pool friends who found our financial discussions inappropriate? Then it hit me. Tyler. Carmen's boyfriend had been surprisingly quiet during most of the trip, but he'd been present for every conversation about money, every family meeting about expenses, every guilt-laden speech about obligations and sacrifices. He'd seen the manipulation tactics firsthand. Maybe his conscience had finally kicked in. Or maybe he was protecting himself from getting dragged into a federal investigation. Either way, someone had given the VA enough specific information to trigger a fraud investigation, and my family was about to face consequences they never saw coming. The next morning, Mom was dressed like she was going to church. Conservative blouse, modest skirt, minimal makeup. She'd transformed back into the respectable mother and veteran caregiver she wanted investigators to see. Marcus, honey, I hope you'll remember that family loyalty goes both ways, she said as I headed out for my interview. We've supported you through everything, and now we're trusting you to do the right thing. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. The VA regional office was a beige government building that smelled like industrial carpet and bureaucracy. Jennifer Walsh turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with graying hair and a no-nonsense handshake. Agent Rodriguez looked like he'd stepped out of a law enforcement training manual, serious expression, crisp suit, and a briefcase full of documents. Mr. Hernandez, thank you for coming in voluntarily. We want to stress that you're not under investigation. We're trying to understand whether you're receiving appropriate support in managing your disability benefits. They led me into a small conference room with a recording device and a stack of financial records that made my heart sink. Bank statements, credit card transactions, travel receipts, they had everything. Let's start with your living situation, Agent Rodriguez said, consulting his notes. You're currently residing in your parents' basement, is that correct? My mother's basement. Rick is my stepfather. And you pay rent for this accommodation? No, my mother said I could stay there while I got back on my feet. How would you characterize your relationship with your family regarding your disability compensation? The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. I could lie, protect my family, and hope this all went away, or I could tell the truth and watch my entire support system collapse. I chose honesty. For the next 2 hours, I walked them through everything. The initial vacation proposal, the escalating expenses, the emotional manipulation, the plans for future trips funded by my benefits, the family's sense of entitlement to my military compensation. Jennifer and Agent Rodriguez took detailed notes, occasionally exchanging meaningful glances when I described particularly egregious examples of financial coercion. Mr. Hernandez, are you aware that using VA disability benefits to fund luxury vacations for extended family members violates federal guidelines for appropriate benefit usage? I am now. Have family members explicitly threatened to withdraw housing or support if you don't provide financial assistance? I thought about Mom's parting comment that morning. Not explicitly, but the implication is always there. Jennifer leaned forward. Marcus, can I call you Marcus? I want you to understand something. What you're describing is a form of financial abuse. Veterans with disabilities are protected under federal law from family members who exploit their benefits. The word abuse hit me like a slap. I'd been thinking of it as manipulation, pressure, guilt-tripping, but not abuse. Based on our interview today and the financial evidence we've gathered, we have sufficient grounds to launch a formal investigation into potential benefit fraud and veteran exploitation. This investigation will include interviews with your family members, financial audits, and coordination with other federal agencies if necessary. What does that mean for me? For you, protection, resources, help transitioning to independent living if that's what you choose. For your family members who knowingly exploited your benefits, he paused meaningfully. That depends on what our investigation reveals. Jennifer handed me a business card and a pamphlet about veteran advocacy services. Marcus, you're not alone in this. More veterans than you might think face financial exploitation from family members. There are support systems in place to help you rebuild your independence and protect your benefits. Walking out of that government building, I felt simultaneously terrified and liberated. Terrified because I'd essentially signed my family's death warrant. Liberated because for the first time in months, someone was on my side. My phone started ringing before I even reached my car. Mom's number flashed on the screen, followed immediately by Rick's, then Carmen's, then Tyler's. Word had already gotten back to them somehow. I turned off my phone and drove to the only place I could think of, a coffee shop downtown where I could sit anonymously and process what had just happened. I had no idea that while I was giving my statement to the VA, Agent Rodriguez's partner was conducting surprise interviews with my neighbors, or that a forensic accountant was already analyzing 3 months of my family's financial records. The investigation I'd started was moving faster than I ever imagined, and my family's reckoning was about to begin. I spent 3 days hiding out in cheap motels and 24-hour diners while my phone exploded with increasingly desperate messages from my family. By the time I finally returned home, the atmosphere had shifted from panic to full-scale warfare. Mom was waiting for me in the living room, flanked by Rick and Carmen like some kind of intervention committee. Tyler was conspicuously absent, which confirmed my suspicions about who'd contacted the VA. Marcus, Mom began, her voice artificially calm, we need to discuss the lies you told those government people. I didn't lie about anything. You made our family sound like criminals. Do you have any idea what you've done to us? Rick leaned forward, his face red with barely controlled anger. 2 federal agents showed up at my workplace yesterday. At my workplace, Marcus. They interviewed my supervisor about my financial situation and asked if I'd ever discussed your military benefits with coworkers. They came to my campus too, Carmen added, her voice shaking. They pulled me out of my psychology class to ask about our family financial arrangements. Do you know how humiliating that was? For the first time, I felt a surge of satisfaction instead of guilt. They were experiencing consequences for their actions, and they hated it. How do you think I felt being manipulated into funding your vacation? I shot back. Manipulated? Mom's voice cracked with indignation. We're your family. Everything we did was out of love. Love doesn't cost $12,000. That's when Rick exploded. You ungrateful piece of shit. We opened our home to you when you came back broken. We could have put you in some government facility, but we didn't. We sacrificed our comfort, our privacy, our financial stability to take care of you. You put me in your basement and spent my disability money on a luxury vacation. It was a family healing trip, Mom screamed. We were all traumatized by your injury. We all needed time to process and recover together. The circular logic was still there, but now it sounded desperate instead of convincing. Carmen started crying, the same manipulative tears she'd perfected as a teenager. Marcus, you're destroying our family. Mom might lose her job. Rick could be fired. I might have to drop out of school because of the investigation. Maybe you should have thought about that before treating my disability payments like your personal ATM. We never treated them like, Mom began, then stopped mid-sentence. The front door had opened without anyone knocking. Agent Rodriguez walked in, followed by Jennifer Walsh and two other people I didn't recognize, a woman with a briefcase and a man with a badge visible on his belt. "Good afternoon, folks," Agent Rodriguez said, his tone professional but firm. "We're here to conduct follow-up interviews and execute a federal search warrant." He handed Mom an official document. Her hands were visibly shaking as she read it. "A search warrant?" Rick's voice climbed an octave. "For what?" "Financial records, communication devices, and any documents related to Mr. Hernandez's VA benefits," the woman with the briefcase explained. "I'm Agent Sarah Chen with the Inspector General's office. We're expanding this investigation based on evidence of systematic benefit fraud." The next 4 hours were surreal. Federal agents moved through our house like a surgical team, photographing documents, copying hard drives, and bagging evidence. Mom sat on the couch in shocked silence, while Rick paced around muttering about constitutional rights and government overreach. Carmen locked herself in her room and refused to come out, even when agents knocked to request her laptop and phone. "Ma'am, we can obtain these items with or without your cooperation," Agent Chen called through the door. "Cooperation will be noted in our report." 20 minutes later, Carmen emerged, red-eyed and defeated, carrying her electronics like she was surrendering weapons. The most damaging evidence came from Mom's home office. Agent Chen found printed emails discussing my monthly income and handwritten notes calculating how much of my benefits could be allocated to family expenses versus my personal needs. She also found travel brochures for European cruises with cost breakdowns that matched my disability payment schedule perfectly. "Mrs. Hernandez," Agent Chen said, holding up a yellow legal pad covered in Mom's handwriting, "can you explain these calculations that appear to budget Mr. Hernandez's future benefits for family vacation expenses?" Mom's face went white. "Those were just daydreams, fantasy planning. Everyone looks at vacation brochures." "Fantasy planning that includes specific dates corresponding to Mr. Hernandez's benefit payment schedule? I don't remember writing those." But the evidence was damning. Mom had been planning a systematic exploitation of my benefits months in advance, treating my military compensation like guaranteed family income. While agents processed evidence upstairs, Jennifer Walsh pulled me aside for a private conversation. "Marcus, based on what we've found today, this investigation is expanding beyond benefit misuse into potential criminal fraud. Your family members may face federal charges." The words hit me harder than I expected. Despite everything they'd done, the idea of my mother facing criminal charges felt overwhelming. What kind of charges? Fraud, conspiracy, theft of government benefits. If convicted, they could face significant fines and prison time. Prison time? My mother in federal prison because she'd spent my disability money on a Hawaiian vacation? Is there any way to— I struggle to find the words. Can't we just make them pay the money back? Jennifer's expression softened. "Marcus, I understand this is your family, but what they did goes beyond simple poor judgment. They systematically planned to exploit your military benefits. They showed no remorse when confronted. They attempted to manipulate you into continued compliance." She paused, studying my face carefully. The anonymous caller who reported the situation provided recordings of conversations where your family members discussed treating your benefits as family money and made derogatory comments about your military service and disability. Recordings? Someone had actually recorded my family discussing my benefits. Who was it? "I can tell you now that it was Tyler Morrison, your sister's boyfriend. He contacted us 3 days into your Hawaii trip. Apparently, he was disturbed by conversations he overheard and decided he couldn't be complicit in what he called stealing from a wounded veteran. Carmen's boyfriend of 3 months had more integrity than my entire family combined. He provided detailed information about your family's financial planning, their attitude toward your military service, and their plans for future exploitation of your benefits. His testimony is what allowed us to move so quickly. Agent Rodriguez approached us as the search was winding down. Mr. Hernandez, we're recommending that you relocate temporarily while this investigation proceeds. Your family may attempt to influence your testimony or retaliate against you for cooperating with federal agents. Where would I go? The VA has emergency housing assistance for veterans in situations like this. We can have you placed in transitional housing within 48 hours. I looked around the house I'd grown up in, now swarming with federal agents and filled with evidence of my family's betrayal. The basement where I'd been living felt like a prison now, not a temporary refuge. What happens next? Grand jury proceedings within 2 weeks, Agent Chen said, joining our conversation. If they return indictments, your family members will be arrested and charged with federal crimes. All of them? Your mother and stepfather definitely. Your sister's involvement may result in lesser charges depending on how much she knowingly participated in the scheme. As the federal agents packed up their evidence and prepared to leave, Mom made one final attempt at manipulation. Marcus, honey, please don't let them destroy our family. We can fix this. We can pay back every penny and go to counseling and work things out together. But her words sounded hollow now, rehearsed, like lines from a script she'd been perfecting. We can't fix this, Mom. You planned this. You budgeted my disability money like it belonged to you. You treated my military service like a family lottery ticket. That's not true. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app, where I'd been documenting everything since Hawaii. You told Mrs. Anderson at the resort that my disability check was a blessing for our whole family. You calculated how much of my benefits you could spend on vacations without affecting my basic needs. You planned a European cruise using money I haven't even received yet. Each fact hit her like a physical blow. Rick grabbed her arm like he was afraid she might collapse. The worst part isn't even the money, I continued. It's that you never saw me as your son coming home from war. You saw me as a monthly payment with a sob story attached. Agent Rodriguez handed me his business card as they prepared to leave. Mr. Hernandez, someone from Victim Services will contact you tomorrow about relocation assistance and counseling resources. You did the right thing here. After the agents left, the house fell into complete silence. Mom sat on the couch, staring at nothing. Rick had disappeared somewhere. Carmen hadn't come out of her room. I went down to the basement and started packing my few belongings. After months of feeling powerless, manipulated, and exploited, I was finally taking control of my own life. I had no idea that my family's legal troubles were just beginning, or that the media would soon turn our story into a national conversation about veteran exploitation. 6 months later, I was sitting in a federal courthouse watching my mother being sentenced for conspiracy to commit benefit fraud when I realized I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not sadness, not even relief. Just emptiness where my family used to be. The transitional housing the VA provided turned out to be a small but clean apartment in a complex specifically for disabled veterans. For the first time since losing my leg, I had my own space. My own kitchen, my own front door that I could lock. No basement, no fold-out couch, no craft room where my childhood bedroom used to be. The first month was the hardest, learning to live alone while dealing with federal prosecutors, victim advocates, and a media circus that somehow discovered our story. The headline, "Family Steals Wounded Veterans Disability Money for Luxury Vacation," appeared in newspapers across the country. Mom hired an expensive lawyer who tried to paint her as a grieving mother overwhelmed by her son's war injuries. The defense strategy focused on family trauma, caregiver stress, and poor financial judgment rather than deliberate fraud. It didn't work. The evidence was too overwhelming. Tyler's reportings captured Mom and Rick discussing my benefits like business assets. The handwritten vacation budgets showed systematic planning. The credit card statements revealed a pattern of luxury spending that coincided perfectly with my disability payments. But the most damaging evidence came from Carmen. 3 weeks after the search warrant, she contacted Agent Rodriguez requesting a private meeting. She was facing potential felony charges as an accessory to fraud, and her lawyer recommended cooperation in exchange for a plea agreement. What Carmen revealed to investigators shocked even me. The family had been planning to exploit my benefits since the day I enlisted 5 years ago. They'd researched military disability compensation, calculated potential monthly payments for various injury scenarios, and even discussed how much money different types of combat wounds might generate. They talked about your military service like an investment, Agent Rodriguez told me during one of our follow-up interviews. Your sister provided text messages where your mother discussed hoping you'd be injured badly enough to qualify for maximum disability benefits. My own mother had essentially hoped I'd come home maimed so she could profit from my suffering. Carmen also revealed that the Hawaii vacation was just the beginning. They'd planned annual trips, home improvements, and even discussed using my benefits as collateral for business loans. Rick wanted to start a landscaping company funded entirely by my disability payments. In exchange for her cooperation, Carmen received probation and community service instead of prison time. She also agreed to testify against Mom and Rick, sealing their fate. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified for 2 full days, walking the jury through the timeline of manipulation, emotional blackmail, and systematic exploitation. The hardest part was reading text messages where Mom complained to her friends about having to deal with Marcus's drama while simultaneously planning how to spend my next disability check. Tyler also testified, playing the recordings he'd made during our Hawaii trip. Listening to my family's voices in that sterile courtroom, hearing them discuss my military compensation like it belonged to them, was more painful than any physical therapy session I'd ever endured. "The boy owes us this money," Mom's voice crackled through the courthouse speakers. "We sacrificed our lives for his military career. Now it's time for him to take care of his family." "He's got guaranteed income for life," Rick responded on the recording. "We should be living better than this. Hell, we earned it more than he did." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Mom was convicted on 7 federal charges, including conspiracy, fraud, and theft of government benefits. She received 3 years in federal prison and was ordered to pay $43,000 in restitution, not just the Hawaii money, but every disability payment she'd influenced or controlled. Rick got 2 years and a $25,000 fine. His landscaping dreams died in a federal courtroom. Carmen's probation required her to complete 500 hours of community service at a veterans center, where she'd see firsthand how disability benefits are supposed to help injured service members rebuild their lives. But the legal victory felt hollow. I'd won the case and lost my family forever. The media attention brought unexpected consequences, though. Veterans advocacy groups reached out, offering support. A nonprofit organization that helps disabled veterans achieve independence contacted me about becoming a spokesperson for financial abuse awareness. Most surprisingly, other veterans started sharing their own stories of family exploitation. The VA estimated that nearly 30% of disabled veterans experience some form of financial abuse from family members, but most never report it due to shame, guilt, or fear of losing their support systems. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. I'd just been isolated by people who wanted to control my money. 8 months after the trial ended, I used my accumulated disability payments to put a down payment on a small house across town. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small yard where I could learn to garden. But it was mine, purchased with money intended to help me rebuild my life after military service. The house came with something I hadn't expected: neighbors who were genuinely kind without wanting anything in return. Mrs. Patterson next door brought me casseroles during my first week and never once asked about my prosthetic or my military service. The family across the street invited me to their 4th of July barbecue simply because I was their neighbor. Real relationships, it turned out, didn't come with financial expectations or guilt-laden obligations. I started attending a support group for veterans who'd experienced family exploitation. The stories were eerily similar. Parents who saw military compensation as retirement income, spouses who controlled every penny, siblings who treated wounded veterans like personal ATMs. But hearing those stories also showed me how recovery was possible. Veterans who'd rebuilt their lives, established healthy boundaries, and found new definitions of family based on respect rather than obligation. 6 months ago, I received a letter from Mom in federal prison. 3 pages of handwritten apologies, explanations, and requests for forgiveness. She claimed she'd found God, realized her mistakes, and wanted to rebuild our relationship when she was released. The letter sat on my kitchen counter for 2 weeks before I threw it away, unopened after the first paragraph. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Some betrayals run too deep for forgiveness. Some relationships are too toxic to salvage, even when they're supposed to be family. Tyler, surprisingly, became an unlikely friend. He transferred to the University of Iowa to get away from the drama, but we stayed in touch. He never asked for recognition for being a whistleblower, never made himself the hero of the story. He just did what he thought was right when he saw something wrong. "I couldn't watch them steal from you anymore," he told me over coffee one afternoon. "You served your country and nearly died for it. The least you deserved was to have your benefits used for your own recovery, not their vacation fund." Today, I work part-time as a counselor at the same veterans center where Carmen does her community service. The irony isn't lost on me. She's required to help veterans as punishment for exploiting one, while I help veterans by choice as part of my own healing. We don't speak when our schedules overlap. There's nothing left to say. I've testified before Congress twice about veteran financial exploitation. The VA has implemented new monitoring systems to detect unusual spending patterns. Federal prosecutors have created specialized units to handle benefit fraud cases. My story became a cautionary tale, a training example, a policy catalyst. But for me, it was simpler than that. It was the story of learning that family isn't defined by blood or guilt or obligation. Real families don't come with a monthly payment plan attached. The real family supports your recovery instead of profiting from your disability. I found that family in fellow veterans, in advocacy groups, in neighbors who brought casseroles without expecting anything in return, and in a boyfriend who risked everything to protect me from people I thought loved me. My disability benefits now go exactly where they were intended, toward my medical care, my housing, my future, and, occasionally, my own vacations. Modest trips where I actually enjoy myself, instead of calculating costs and managing other people's expectations. Last month, I went to Hawaii again. Just me, a good book, and a budget I could actually afford. I stayed in a simple hotel, ate at local restaurants, and spent my days reading on the beach without worrying about anyone else's agenda. It was the first real vacation I'd ever taken. And I paid for every penny of it myself, with money that was always mine to begin with. 2 years have passed since that courtroom sentencing, and I'm sitting in my own backyard, watching the sunset over the vegetable garden I planted last spring. It's a simple pleasure that would have been impossible in that basement where my family kept me isolated and dependent. The garden wasn't just about growing tomatoes and peppers. It was about putting down roots in a life that finally belonged to me. Last week, I received notification that Mom was being released from federal prison after serving 18 months of her 3-year sentence. Good behavior, apparently. She'd been sending letters through Carmen, who now works at a different veterans center in Des Moines, trying to establish some kind of communication. I haven't responded to any of them. Some people think I'm being too harsh, that family forgiveness is important for healing. But those people didn't watch their mother calculate their military compensation like a business investment. They didn't hear recordings of their family discussing their war injuries as financial opportunities. There's a difference between forgiveness and allowing yourself to be victimized again. My work at the Veterans Center has introduced me to dozens of stories similar to mine. Just last month, I counseled a Marine whose wife had spent his entire disability settlement on cosmetic surgery and luxury cars. Before that, an Army sergeant whose parents were using his benefits to pay their mortgage while he lived in their garage. The patterns are always the same: manipulation disguised as love, guilt weaponized as obligation, and disabled veterans treated like ATMs with traumatic backstories. But I've also seen the recoveries: veterans who learned to set boundaries, who built new support systems, who discovered that independence was possible, even with service-connected disabilities. My own recovery included unexpected developments. Last year, I met Dr. Rebecca Torres at a veterans advocacy conference in Chicago. She's a psychiatrist who specializes in military trauma, and she was presenting research about family exploitation of disabled service members. We started talking during a coffee break, and somehow that conversation continued for 6 months. She understands why I can't trust family relationships easily. She doesn't push me to reconcile with people who hurt me. Most importantly, she sees my disability as part of who I am, not as something that makes me less capable or more vulnerable. For the first time since losing my leg, I'm in a relationship where someone values me for who I am, rather than what I can provide financially. The VA used my case as a model for new fraud detection protocols. They've identified over 200 similar cases nationwide and recovered millions of dollars in misused benefits. More importantly, they've connected hundreds of exploited veterans with support services and independent living resources. My story became bigger than my personal experience. It highlighted a problem that was hiding in plain sight: families who see military service as a pathway to financial gain rather than a sacrifice deserving respect and proper support. 3 months ago, I bought a newer car with money I'd saved from properly managed disability benefits. Nothing fancy, just a reliable vehicle that doesn't require anyone else's permission or guilt-laden discussions about family obligations. The freedom to make decisions about my own money, my own living situation, my own relationships, these are things most adults take for granted. For disabled veterans facing family exploitation, they represent hard-won victories. Tyler graduated from University of Iowa with a social work degree. He specializes in military family counseling now, helping relatives understand appropriate ways to support veterans without becoming financially dependent on them. He turned his experience witnessing my family's exploitation into a career helping prevent similar situations. Sometimes doing the right thing creates ripple effects you never anticipated. I still have challenging days: phantom pain, mobility issues, the occasional nightmare about that IED explosion in Afghanistan. But those challenges are manageable when you have proper support, appropriate medical care, and benefits that actually serve their intended purpose. The basement where this story began has been converted back into my old bedroom, according to neighbors. Mom is apparently planning to move back in when she's released. Rick lost his job during the trial and never recovered financially from the restitution payments. Carmen finished her community service but dropped out of school. The stress of the trial and media attention derailed her academic plans. She works retail now and avoids talking about our family situation. Their consequences were earned, not imposed. They made choices that prioritized their desires over my recovery, and they're living with the results. As for me, I'm planning another trip to Hawaii next month, this time with Rebecca, who wants to see the resort where my nightmare began. We'll stay somewhere modest, eat at local restaurants, and enjoy a vacation paid for with appropriately used disability benefits. The difference between that first Hawaiian trip and this upcoming one represents everything I've learned about the difference between exploitation and genuine support, between manipulation and real love, between family obligation and family respect. My disability benefits now serve their intended purpose, helping a wounded veteran rebuild his life with dignity, independence, and hope for the future. That's exactly what they were meant to do all along. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.